Are you the type of person who likes straight lines when you're cutting your grass? As you can see from my carpet, there's a robot vacuum that can do the same thing for you.
Hello, I am Wanderer001, and this is my review of the Wyze Robot Vacuum. Yes, from the same people who brought you the Wyze Cam cameras, version 2, 3, original, and Cam Pan, you now have a robot vacuum that you can add to your arsenal of smart home devices. This particular robot vacuum is what's known as a Lidar version robot vacuum. So there are some things that you need to consider if this is your first time looking into a robot vacuum. First being that not all vacuums are the same. Most use what's known as a IR and a bump sensor. So this does have a bump sensor on the front of it, but it also does have two collision sensors underneath the robot itself. Most robot vacuums will have IR sensors on the front and the bump so that it just kind of ping-pongs around your house and vacuums that way. Lidar-based systems will actually scan the surroundings using Lidar to make a map of your house and vacuum in a pattern so that you know that every square inch of your house has been vacuumed. The Lidar system on the Wyze Robot Vacuum here can scan up to 26 feet away and has over 2,000 samples per second. So the way that Lidar works is underneath this disc here, there's a spinning radar. And it scans your house, kind of like what you're seeing here. Granted, it's in black and white and I had to use one of my cameras in night mode, but you can see it's mapping alongside the couch and a little bit on that leg. So that's how Lidar maps and navigates throughout your house. So if you've never had one like that before, this is how this particular robot vacuum navigates your house. Up top here, you will notice that the vacuum itself is made up of a shiny plastic. One thing I don't particularly care for is when things are made up of shiny plastic, but it is what it is. You have your Lidar sensor right here and two buttons. You only have two buttons on the top of this, power and home. And part of that is, well, powering it on tells it to go clean. And it only tells it to go clean. There's no specific go clean over here. It cleans everything. And then home will tell it to recharge. Because this is a robot vacuum, a smart robot vacuum, that is produced by the Wyze company, well, obviously there's a bit of setup because you want this to talk to your Wyze app. So let's take a look at what setup of the Wyze robotic vacuum looks like. This is setup of the Wyze vacuum. You have the charging dock, the charge cable and large power brick, and you've got the unit itself, and then one side brush. So first we're going to flip it over and attach the side brush. So just line up your square peg there. You'll hear it click into place, and there you go. And then we can flip it back over. And then based on our starter guide, we kind of did step 2, which is click the brush. We're going to get the charging station in place. For me, it's going to be a little tricky because my placement of my robot vacuum is under my entertainment center. So let me get this situated and then I'll bring you in to show you what I did. For me, based on the cable length that I see there, I probably won't use one of the interesting features of this charging dock, which is the bottom actually opens up. That's where you plug it in, but you can also wind the cable in here to kind of help with cable management. Now, based on the length of this and the power supply that I'll be plugging into being there and the unit sitting over here, I don't think I'm going to actually use this, but because it's going to live under the entertainment center, I wanted to make sure that I showed you this is an actual interesting concept because cable management is difficult.
Here you can see, again, cable management is horrible down here, except for this guy, which it did end up wrapping the cord underneath, so that was benefit. So here you can see it's on, you see the lights on, and then we move on to the next step.
According to the pamphlet, the next thing we do, now that we have power in the docking station, is we press the power button for 3 seconds to tell it to go charge. So let's try that now. All right, so it was a little longer than 3 seconds, but you can see it's pulsing now.
Turning on.
It just talked. It said turning on. I don't know if you heard that. So it's still sitting there blinking. My assumption is it probably wants to connect to the app. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip ahead, and I'm going to jump into the app right here, and we're going to select add a new device, and we're going to come down, we're going to find the vacuum. So what it wants me to do here is press and hold both the buttons until it says Wi-Fi connection. So since it's not doing anything and going to the charging dock, we'll give this a shot.
Wi-Fi connection has been reset. Awaiting network connection.
All right, so it says Wi-Fi connection has been reset and it's flashing, so we're going to hit next. It wants to know my network password, so we're just going to throw this in really quick. All right, and then from here, I need to connect to the Wi-Fi network that this has created. So we're just going to come down. I'm going to search for my Wi-Fi networks, and we're going to look for the one that says WVCR because I have a Wyze base station also hanging around and sending out its own Wi-Fi connection. So we're connecting the phone, and if you have something on your phone that will not connect to a Wi-Fi network that does not have internet connectivity, you want to make sure that you kind of tell your phone it's okay, just connect to it. So once you're connected to this network, you say choose, which I did. So I select this one, and now it's connecting. So that's still flashing. This is still flashing. Could take up to a minute. So we'll see what this does. Then hopefully after it connects here, it will actually go to its base station. Because I was surprised that it didn't automatically go. I have it right in front of the base station, which is just under there. Yeah, look at that. Connected it. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to give it a name. I'm just going to call it Wyze Vac and finish. Option to share this device if you want to. We're going to say maybe later. And next we're going to complete setup. So this one wants you to now plug in the charging station after you've attached it to the app. So the pamphlet that comes with the vacuum and the directions from the app, slightly different. We're going to say next. This one wants me to actually physically move that to connect. We're going to hit next, and there's a firmware update that it needs to do. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to take this and push it under there and then do the firmware update, because apparently that's what it wants me to do.
All right, so I didn't quite catch that on camera. When I pushed it back there to charge, notice when I finally made contact, these will blink orange and it says starting to charge. So know if you have this in a place that's a little difficult to get to, wiggle it around until you actually get those connection points in the back and you hear starting to charge.
Now you can see my vacuum sticking out right there. We are going to update the firmware. And again, this can take some time, so I won't subject you to sitting through the firmware upgrade. We'll do a time marker of 2:52 and see how long it takes. Firmware took a total of 2 minutes, and the Robot Vac said turning on, so I'm assuming the reboot cycle, and then informed me that the update was successful. Talking robot. All right, here you go. This is what it looks like when you're done. Now, obviously, I haven't sent this out to do what it needs to do yet. This is just what it looks like for the initial setup. There you saw it came with a base station, which is currently hiding under there, with a power cord that you can hide. I really appreciate that particular design aspect of the charging system for the Wyze Robot. Now, originally, you will need to charge your Wyze Robot for 4 hours. I have found subsequently after that, if you can deplete it completely, the battery that is, it will take 3.5 hours to almost 4 hours to charge. The thing with the way that the Wyze Robot works is because it's using Lidar and mapping, it knows exactly where it has been and what it has cleaned. So the chances of you actually depleting the battery completely on this are very small unless you have a larger square footage home. The battery within the Robot Vacuum is a 3200 milliamp battery. One of the interesting design aspects of this, and from somebody who's coming from a older EcoVac robot where the dustbin was actually in the back there, I've seen a lot of other robots do this too. Wyze has your dustbin on the top, along with a cleaning tool. And having the integrated cleaning tool in your robot so you don't lose it is very nice. The cleaning tool itself has a bristled brush there, as well as a little razor blade there to clean the bristles underneath, which we'll get to in a moment. The one thing that I wish it had that the EcoVac did was a claw so that you can kind of clean the brush a little better. This is one of the other interesting things about the EcoVac, in that because it's a smart robot vacuum, it likes to talk to you a lot. Let me demonstrate.
Dustbin removed.
So there you can hear it said dustbin removed. And there are 2 pins in there which let it know that the dustbin has been removed. However, if we look at the dustbin itself, there actually is no metal contacts on the bin itself. So that's just a pressure mechanism touching another point inside the vacuum to tell it that it's been removed. The voice commands are one thing that I wish Wyze would have done a little differently, in that their app would have a way of actually turning them off or selecting which ones you wanted to hear. The dustbin itself is an interesting shape. Don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to open this like I did. I'm going to save you the time. Just come to the corner and pull. These little latches here, I thought for the longest time that I would have to pry this open somehow. You really don't. Just pick the corner, pull it down, and it will open it up. The bin itself has a rubberized gasket, which helps to create that great amount of suction that the robot vacuum has, but it also collects dust. So you're going to want to make sure that you clean that off. The back of the dustbin has their HEPA filter. It's a paper filter that lives in plastic. This is another thing that's very different from my EcoVac, where the paper filters were separate and you could buy a bunch of them and slip them in and out. I'm sure Wyze will have replacements, but they're definitely going to be proprietary because they have this plastic housing. They do give you an extra HEPA filter with the purchase of your Wyze vacuum. And then back there, this is another thing. This is built into the dustbin itself, and that is an extra screen to help cut down on dust. Now, the reason I mentioned that the dustbin itself does not have any metal contacts is because one of the things I've always wanted is a robot vacuum to be able to tell me how much is in the bin. And because this lives on top with a lid that's closed and under my entertainment center, I kind of forget sometimes because I can't see this. And the fact that you see how wide I have to open this in order for the bin to be removed. I will say, if you don't have the bin in and you try and tell it to go clean,
Please install dustbin before cleaning.
it lets you know that it can't do that by flashing red. So we're going to pick that up, throw our dustbin back in.
Dustbin installed.
So now, if it wanted to start, it could. But we are going to close this up and bring you to the front where you can see the Lidar sensor. And the reason I'm bringing the Lidar sensor into focus is because obviously this is a very small flat device, but you do have a portion that's going to stick out. And depending on what it's trying to get under, it may bump the Lidar sensor. But the sensor itself is protected in this little housing. It's got a plastic bit right there, so if it bumps into anything, it does not actually hit the Lidar scanner, which you can see right there in its rotation. And if I spin it a little more, you might be able to actually see that there is a sensor right there. You can kind of see the two right there and there, and that's how it's scanning. So that's your Lidar sensor. Again, great that it has that bump, but just keep in mind that little extra will keep it from getting under specific pieces of furniture. One other thing to consider with a Lidar-based robot vacuum is, unlike an IR or a bump version, if it detects something, such as you have a skirt on your bed or a piece of cloth draped over your bed and it's down in its view, it will determine that as a obstruction that it can't go through, unlike the bounce or the IR ones where it would just punch through it. So keep that in mind. If you are using this and you want it to get under specific things, you're going to want to pick them up so that it can get under the things, because that's one of the beauties of a robot vacuum opposed to a traditional stand-up vacuum. Sometimes they can get under things that the traditional vacuums cannot. I have a Dyson Animal that cannot get under my entertainment center, cannot get under my beds or my nightstands, but robot vacuum here can. Coming to the front, we have one recharging sensor. So this is not to help it scan your house. This is just so that it can find its way back to the charging receptacle. And we're just gonna turn this. You'll notice that the bump guard is rubberized. It very rarely hits something, but it is nice to know that it's both plastic and rubberized, so it's not gonna do any damage. In the back here, you have your very large exhaust. And I will say that this was much louder than I thought it would be, even on its lowest setting.
Quiet. Standard. Strong. Test the barrier. And cat's giving 0S. Almost 0. So I did mark up to the point, and then just going to circle back.
So it might not be the easiest to listen to TV or something while this is going, but it is nice that you can just kind of set it up on a schedule and it will do its own thing. These are the charging contacts, and this was another concern that I had was my other robot vacuum, the back of it, you can see where it's hit paint and stuff because it's just bumping around. However, because the Lidar system knows exactly where this is in position to the rest of your house, these have not actually scratched anything. Like they haven't touched my wood furniture or anything that I was worried about. So that's actually a plus to know about. And when it goes back to charge itself, it is rather odd to watch because it will drive itself forward and then turn around and back up because, well, it's got to get to those. On the other side, you can see there's nothing there. So unlike some other vacuums, there is no power switch. There is no plug to plug into the vacuum itself. This only will be able to charge via the charging station. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take and we're gonna flip this over so you can get an idea of what the underside looks like. You have your one side brush, which is, again, something different for me. I had one that had two side brushes. You do get an extra side brush in the box with the Wyze Robot. It does really kind of come close to the wheel over here, which is a little odd. And then the way that they sit, because they have these long rubberized arms, it's really just the tips that are hitting things. And it is on the right side when it is corrected instead of having to that kind of help feed things in. So this is really just to kind of hit the sides. You do have two independent suspension wheels, and these wheels are rubberized and super tracky, which is very good. So I have had places that this has been able to get into and out of that my other older vacuum could not. These wheels, very good. Doesn't have any problems with inclines or anything of that nature. Right here, you have your rotating ball. It doesn't really do anything. We'll spin this around momentarily because you can see here one of the sensors that I was talking about. So you've got two collision sensors and then 4 drop sensors. The thing with this is because it is a LiDAR-based system, when you try and drive it to the edge of a staircase, it really doesn't want to go there anyway because it knows that there's nothing there that it needs to vacuum. Here we have our brush, which is enclosed. It's simple to remove, just squeeze. This little door flops open, and then you've got your brush. Now I left it completely dirty, after my last cleaning so that you would get an idea of what this looked like. So we're gonna take that out and let you see what the brush looks like. So you have lots of pet hair and human hair, long human hair. So this is where the cleaning tool comes in. You would be able to scrape out and cut any of this human hair that gets in it. One of the things that I like about the design of this brush over the other ones that I've tried is the rubber paddles are actually broken into little segments. So one of the things that I noticed with longer human hair on a solid rubber brush, they would get in there and eventually, because of the spinning, if you don't clean it out enough, they would break the rubber flaps, so you'd have to replace it sooner. And then you've got your standard bristle brush like you would find in most vacuum cleaners. It is a very large brush, which is something else that I also appreciate, in that it has a nice large swath that it can clean. And for future, hopefully not anytime soon, if you need to replace your battery, this is going to be your battery housing. You're going to need to take your drawer off and then get yourself a set of probably eyeglass screwdrivers to get in here, because it's going to be 4 very small screws. What we're going to do now is we're going to put this back in. One side is a stationary and the other side spins. So just know your stationary goes over here on the right side, because that's what's going to have the motor grab and spin. And then this over here rotates on a pivot because, well, that's got a spinning mechanism on that side. So there were a lot of logistics speak about what the robot vacuum does, how it is made, how it's actually going to clean. Let's take a look at its actual maiden voyage in cleaning my house.
Not the best lighting for the maiden voyage, but we're going to try this. The app says it's 100% charged, but also still indicating that it is charging. So we're going to take a chance and send it out, because I picked up everywhere, because I want to see how the mapping goes. In a worst case scenario, I will redo this, but we're also going to try and do a runtime test. So starting at 4 p.m., we select clean.
Starting cleaning.
And there it goes. So the Lidar is getting an idea of where it is and what it needs to do. And it immediately tries to go back towards the charging station. My assumption with the Lidar is that it's going to try and do a full perimeter. And again, this is my first Lidar vacuum cleaner. So it's going to try and do a full perimeter to map things out. And then it'll be able to work a pattern. So while it's mapping, we're going to come in here, and it has, please press the clean button on your map. The clean button on your map will be displayed here. So it's actually kind of came around the corner here, and it is running down into my kitchen. So I had to pick up cat bowls and everything, but my assumption is that it is going to make a full map. My thought, though, is it's going to be a little weird, because the way that my kitchen is set up, there's an out over here that would then run back up into the living room. So I'm curious to see how it maps all of that. And I'm trying to stay behind it to stay out of the Lidar. Also, admittedly, did not clean anything because I wanted to see how well this would do. So I'm going to let this run, see what it does. All these settings on the vacuum itself, I did not change the power suction. It's on the standard power suction, which is actually its quietest mode, which probably will also mean it will last the longest. So we'll let this do what it needs to do, and we'll see how it does. We'll check the dustbin after its complete runtime, and we'll go from there. As of right now, the app is starting to show it's got 32 feet that it has mapped. Battery is 99%, and it is 1 minute of actually being used, and you probably saw me in there with my headphones on. So it's mapped 32 square feet as of right now. like I said, we'll just let this keep going. Don't mind the horrible wallpaper that will eventually need to come down. And we'll just let it keep on mapping. The beauty of this is if things like a Christmas tree that is not normally there and a cat litter box that's normally over in that corner are mapped in, there is a section that will allow you to clear the maps. So I probably will have to do this again, but I kind of got it and I wanted to do the initial out. Oh, there, it didn't bump into that. So the sensor was good enough to pick up on that. Let's see the wall. It didn't bump the wall. It got really close. And it's navigating its way. It's trying to get under there. It's not wide enough for it. So there was a little bump there. And we'll just let it keep doing what it's doing. It's going back under there where the charging station is. But again, it is trying to figure out everything in the house. So we'll see how well this maps everything out, because again, it started going around the perimeter, but then just kind of took a weird turn, actually went into the kitchen and then came back up the same way. So I've got dining space over there that it needs to come through, and more hallway for it to check out. So we'll see how it does. Let's see, what are you doing? Actually, it looks like it's starting to zigzag itself. So it actually is starting a straight pattern. So this will be interesting. I'm going to pop open the app really quick. And just based on that initial sweep, it does seem to have mapped 102 square feet. And you see that white thing right there. It's already starting to map out so it doesn't miss anything. It'll be interesting because you can see some pockets there where it did not map. So I do want to see what it's like when it gets to some of those non-mapped sections. But right now, it's starting to go straight up and down. And let's see, because it didn't really map up this way. Yeah, see, it's stopping there. It's getting more mapping, and it realizes there's more to do. So let's open our app again. See if it's figuring out more. And I will say it is fairly accurate in that I have a long house. And it is doing what it's doing. So we'll let its initial run go. See how long it goes. Right now it's been running for 5 minutes and it's down to 96 and still stating 105 square feet. I know this is a lot of information for the initial, but like I said, this is my first time with a Lidar based robot. You can see all that? Mm-hmm. Okay.
One of the things that you need to know about when you have a robot vacuum is how to actually operate it. I did talk about the two buttons that you have on the top, one to send it out cleaning and then one to send it home to charge, but because this is a Wyze product, it uses the Wyze app to do more than just clean, and go home. So let's use this as a segue to go check out what the Wyze application for the Wyze Robot Vacuum looks like. This is a look at the Wyze app for your robot vacuum. In this case, you can see I have it at the top of my list after adding, and I did change the name to Sally. So tapping on your RoboVac is going to bring up a map if you already have a map set up. In your case, you won't see anything until the first time you send your robot vacuum out. And what we're gonna do here is zoom in really quickly, because on the map, you actually see this little white circle that's moving around. That white circle is actually my robot vacuum downstairs vacuuming, because I wanted to set it up for, one, the purposes of this review, but also to vacuum. You can see these white lines are where the vacuum has been. For the most part, what it will do is a perimeter around your room and then go back and fill in the empty space. Now you'll notice down here I have a secondary designation of room 2. This is one of the places where I think the software needs a little improvement. Where the robot vacuum is, have a single floor. And this room over here is not actually a room, but rather a door outside. This is a long hallway that leads into a kitchen, and that is a door leading outside. It's all part of the hallway. But the mapping that the Wyze Robot Vacuum did designated this as room 2. And I cannot change the fact that that is room 2. Also, the brains behind the robot vacuum skip different rooms. So room 1, you can see it traced all the way around, and then when it's done with room 1, it will go back to room 2. But I just wanted to share that with you while my robot vacuum was going. It is really neat, because here you can see it went around the legs of a coffee table, and then over here, this is my dining room, which it can't make it under, and right there in the corner, that's actually my old robot vacuum, which I am leaving out for the time being, because the Wyze is now living under my entertainment center where my robot vacuum normally lives. When you first start it, you will see down here, it will say clean. So you tap on that and it will start going. From here, you can pause, and then you can see it says continue or stop. If you stop it, it will head back and charge. In my case, I am going to select continue, and it's going to continue its cleaning cycle. You can see the area scanned right now is 323 square feet. The battery percentage is 70, and the time it has been running is 25 minutes. Now you'll notice that I have these red squares on there. Those red squares are the no-go areas for the vacuum. And this is one of the things I really like about it, because you can set up virtual perimeters that will prevent your robot vacuum from going into a particular location. In my case, I put everything up on tables and let it map my entire first floor. And then afterwards I tell it, don't go in the kitchen and don't go over here, because the kitchen is where my cat's food and water is, and I don't want it knocking into that. That is where my cat's bed is, and I don't feel like picking that up every time I want to run the vacuum. So all I have to do is move 2 TV trays into the kitchen, and then I can run the vacuum and not have to worry. It is odd the way that the Lidar system works, because this little alcove over here is actually my stairs. This over here, I think it's my garage, but it shouldn't be able to penetrate the wall. It's an odd thing, and after the review, I'll probably remap everything. Coming back to our no-go zones, those are done through this little icon right here. Selecting this will allow you to add a new virtual wall or edit a pre-existing wall. And if we zoom in again, you can see there's a little trash can or a sizing arrow. You'll also notice that because I'm doing this while my robot vacuum is actually vacuuming, it pauses it until you're done. To add a virtual wall, you merely select add a wall, and then you can drag into place and then use the sizing handle to make it how you'd like. I do like the fact that you can pinch in to get that a little more precise as to where you want it. I do wish that they would have used lines instead of these square boxes, because I feel that you have a little more control with lines than you do these boxes. And we're just going to say, okay, if we made changes and we want it to save, or we're gonna hit cancel. I'm gonna hit cancel, and then right here, it's spinning, it says cleaning, and we will be able to watch this white dot here move in a second as soon as the app catches up with where it is. And there you can see it moving now. Coming to the upper right hand corner, we have our settings for this particular device. First off, we have the name. We can change it. In my case, I called it Sally. As I said, my wife called it Sally. You can use one of the pre-selected ones, and then you just hit finish to lock in the name. Coming down is our scheduling. The scheduling is very good in that if you don't want to manually run this, you can come in here, select add a schedule or that big old plus sign, and you could select the times, the days, and then here's the fun thing, the actual suction level. So let's say you're setting this up for a Monday, and you could set up multiple schedules. So I'm setting this up on a Monday. I'm not going to run this when I'm home over the weekend. So I want the suction level to be really strong to get everything that I didn't vacuum over the weekend. You can do that. The other thing is you can actually select which room it will target. And this is why I said I wish their room feature was a little more robust than it actually is. I wish I could designate which room was which, because then I could go, this is my dining, this is my living room, and that's the hallway, and that's the kitchen, and then tell it, do the dining room, do the living room, do my hallway. Hopefully, in a firmware patch, that will happen. But that is scheduling. When you're done, you just hit save, or in our case, we're just gonna hit cancel because we're not actually scheduling anything right now. We're gonna select back one more time, which brings us to what we talked about when we were doing our scheduling, which is suction level. So you have quiet, standard, and strong. For me, I have found that my robot vacuum, based on the square footage of my first floor, I can leave it on strong all the time and still have 20% battery left. So I just leave it on strong all the time. It will, depending on the level you have it set for, change the noise volume. So if you want something running while you're around, you might want quiet. I have found that regardless of suction level, the clean that you get is very nice. Selecting back, we are going to show cleaning records. Now the cleaning records are very interesting in that it's a, track of what you've done. So here you could see on the second, this is my cleaning record. I originally mapped everything and it took 1.1 hour. That's a nice thing about this. You can kind of shift that up and down depending on how big your square footage was. Second go around, you could see it took 51 minutes because I started blocking things off. You notice there is a share and a delete. So if you don't want a particular map, you can delete it, or we can select share. It will, in my case, tap into my Android share options. So what I want to come to is this one here. This was me attempting to do my second floor. So here, this is my first floor, and the way my house is it stacks the first floor on the second floor. I don't have this outcropping for my second floor. But I picked up the robot vacuum, put it on the second floor, and it did a good job. It mapped my second floor, but now I've got this weird extra floor mapping that I don't want. This is also where your room designations are. Notice it did not designate, because that's my master bedroom, a second bedroom, and a bedroom. It doesn't label those. And the other thing that I found, because I have the no-go zones on the first floor, it was picking them up for the second floor, so it actually got stuck on the landing for a while because it couldn't get past that no-go that I had set up for my kitchen downstairs until I removed it, and then it could travel around. And that's also where I said the mapping was a little weird. There was like a little bit under the table film on for YouTube. It left a wide swath just empty. It finished this bedroom and my master and then came back in here to finish. I thought that was a little odd, but again, it's a software tweak or a mapping tweak, I assume. So hopefully that can be changed in the future. But those are all your recorded sessions. So you can see I've been testing this quite thoroughly, and with 2 cats, I get a lot of opportunity to do so. You have your accessory lifespan. I'll flash up on screen what the original lifespan was for each of these items, but here you can see 295, 195, and then the 145. The HEPA filter is in a plastic case, as you saw in earlier portion of this, and I don't know how I feel about that because obviously all of these parts you'll have to get from Wyze, but just cleaning the HEPA filter seems weird when it's encased in plastic. Reset map. So when I'm done, I can reset all the maps, meaning it will have to go out and make an initial map for itself again. And if Wyze doesn't come up with a way to have multi-floors, I think that's going to be a little tricky. So they need to, in my opinion, have a setting for multi-floors, and then have some sort of beacon or marker in a second floor or a third floor that you can put so that the vacuum can align itself to that. A new area that you might not have noticed before is the map editor. This is actually something that was added via a firmware upgrade and software update to the app after I filmed my original go through. So we're going to add this so that you can see what the map editor does. So selecting the map editor brings up your map. You can see originally my robot vacuum designated one room and then two rooms over there, which is actually my hallway. If I select a room, I can split this room. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to say split, and then you get these little handles that are not the easiest to work with, as you can see, trying to drag them around. It wants to designate its own area, so it's a little tricky to work with. See right there, it wants to drag that all the way across, even though I want to say that's a room. It wants to drag it so that this entire thing is considered a room. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to say split, and we give it a second because it's going to split that room. So now I have room 1, 2, and 3. I can rename the rooms if I want to. You can also, if I select room 3 and 2, you could merge that. So let's say you screwed something up and you want to bring that together, you can actually do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say yes, merge room 3 and 2, because that's really my hallway and my living room. Now that's one big room. Hypothetically, if I want to come up here and I want to split this, I can try to come here and here. If I can get that to go right there, come on. What I found right now is that it will not split this where it doesn't designate a wall. So all this around here is a wall. You need a wall to anchor this to, this point to. Hopefully, Wyze will fix that so that I can say from here to here, this is one room because that's my kitchen, this is my dining, this is my living room, and I'd love to be able to come up here and say, this is my hallway, I want to do that. So if I split this, notice again, it's grabbing one of the far edges. So if I tried to actually take this handle here and bring it up over here, it won't do that. But the addition of a room editor is nice, so at least you can kind of make it do something. You can also rename the room if you want to, so living room, and select OK. And now instead of room 2, it's called living room. You can share your particular vacuum, again, with anybody who has a Wyze account. Device information, that's going to give you a lot of device information. And then you have submit log. So network failure, hardware problem, or usage problem. And this will go to Wyze tech support. And you can delete this device. So there you go. Let's see how far my robot vacuum got while we were talking. Yep, so there you go. It finished my dining room and now is moving into the living room. I will say that it is nice that if you don't have a lot of stuff in the way, it will just and it goes through rather quickly. For the amount of square footage I have, which is roughly about 500 rounding up, it takes an hour to 50 minutes, which is really nice. Now that I have my robot vacuum back in its charging state, there are some things on this page that I don't particularly care for, and minus the bubbling around a new screen protector I'm testing out. The charging. Once it's fully charged at 100%, it still continues to say charging. So that's a little annoying. There's also no way to tell it do spot cleaning from the app. You can only tell it I want to clean this room or this room. So I can't say do an outline, or in this case, that cutout right there is my cat's litter box. And I would love to be able to say go around that litter box and pick up extra litter without telling it to go out and do the entire room. There's also no way to change or alter the voice commands, so they're always going to be on saying things. And I know in the future Wyze may change that, but right now this is a review of the app as it currently is. One of the other things that I wish the application had, because there's no remote with the robot, so everything is done through the app. There's no Amazon integration. There's no directional D-pad in the application itself. Hopefully, after seeing this review, they'll take some of the things that I said into consideration. So there are a few things about the vacuum that I wish could be changed or will change in the future. That does not take away from the Wyze product itself. It is a very good robot vacuum, especially if you've never had one that is a Lidar-based system before. Now the question is, how much does that Lidar-based system cost? Well, compared to others, it is not as expensive. Granted, it is $250. I did early adopter and I got this for $199.99, so $200. For the extra $50, would I still buy it? Yes, because being able to map out my house and set up no-go zones for this saves me a lot of time. If they will, one, address the voices, address the lights, make it so that I can have more than one floor mapped, that would be great. If you are in the market for a robot vacuum, you're looking for something other than a Roomba, I would recommend checking out the Wyze Robot Vacuum because it is going to do things that you never knew a robot vacuum could do. Granted, it's not perfect. One of the problems with my Lidar-based systems that I have found, at least with the ones that bounced around, it would hit a piece of carpet multiple times. This, it does one sweep and it's done, but that's all Lidar-based systems. So you may have to send this out to do an entire job again. Also, because it designates rooms incorrectly, in my opinion right now, there's no way to tell it to just do a specific area, at least in my house. Not taking away from it in any way, shape, or form, just data points for you to consider when you're looking at this robot vacuum. Still say it is a solid buy. With that being said, I have been Wanderer001. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the area below. And as always, thanks for watching.
If you found this video helpful, consider giving it a like, as that will help other people find the video as well. If you like what I'm doing here, you can always help fuel the next review by buying me a coffee, link in the description below. Last but not least, if you want to be notified when I upload a new video, you know what to do.